God is dead. When Friedrich Nietzsche uttered these words, he wasn't celebrating a crime. He was diagnosing a collapse. He saw that the metaphysical foundations of Western morality, the absolute truths that kept humanity anchored, were dissolving. But Nietzsche didn't leave us in the wreckage. He offered the will to power, not as a political tool for domination, but as a psychological engine for radical self-creation. To Nietzsche, the death of God is not the end of meaning. It is the ultimate liberation of the individual. It is the moment the human animal must choose. Will you drift into the abyss of nihilism, or will you become the architect of your own values? This is not philosophy for the armchair. It is a brutal, high-stakes psychological manual for anyone looking to break the chains of inherited morality and forge an existence that is uniquely, dangerously their own. The diagnosis of modern existence, as Friedrich Nietzsche famously pronounced, began with a seismic shift that most people still refuse to acknowledge. When he declared that God is dead, he was not engaging in a theological debate. He was performing a psychological autopsy on the Western world. He was observing that the foundational pillar upon which human morality, meaning, and purpose had rested for 2 millennia was no longer holding up the ceiling of our reality. The result was not just a loss of faith, it was the birth of a profound psychological crisis that we are still navigating today. We are living in the aftershocks of this collapse, trying to build lives on shifting sands, often unaware that the very ground beneath us has been hollowed out. To understand the anatomy of nihilism, we have to recognize what Nietzsche meant by the death of God. He was describing the moment when transcendental authority lost its power to command the human soul. For centuries, the framework of existence was provided from the outside. You were told who you were, what your duties were, and what the ultimate purpose of your suffering was. There was a narrative to life that transcended the individual. When that narrative dies, you are left with a terrifying vacuum. Suddenly, the universe is no longer a structured home with a father figure watching over it. It is a cold, indifferent, and silent expanse. This is the starting point of the psychological descent into nihilism. Nihilism is not just a philosophical concept. It is a psychological state of profound paralysis. It is the feeling that nothing has intrinsic value, that your struggles are ultimately meaningless, and that the future is just an infinite loop of repetition leading to death. Most people in the modern world spend their entire lives trying to outrun this realization. They bury themselves in distractions, consumerism, social validation, and endless streams of digital information to avoid the silence. But if you strip away these layers of noise, the core question remains. If there is no external, absolute authority to tell me what matters, then what am I doing here? The psychological tragedy of our era is that most people, upon realizing this, do not become free. Instead, they become reactive. They experience the death of the old structure and immediately look for a new one to replace it. They become dependent on new forms of authority, whether it is political ideology, social peer groups, or the relentless pursuit of comfort. They join the herd. Nietzsche observed that the herd is the safest place for a fragile psyche. In the herd, you don't have to carry the burden of defining your own existence. You can adopt the values of the group, repeat their slogans, and feel the comfort of belonging. But this is not living. It is merely an extension of the old, dependent state under a different set of masters. This leads us to the psychological anatomy of resentment. When you live in a state of reaction, when you are constantly looking to others to validate your existence or to tell you what is right, you eventually develop a deep, simmering anger. This is what Nietzsche called resentment. It is the psychology of the weak. It occurs when you see others who are stronger, more creative, or more autonomous than you, and instead of admiring them, you despise them. You want to bring them down to your level because their existence reminds you of your own lack of agency. You try to convince yourself that your weakness is actually a moral virtue. You start to frame the world in terms of what you are not and what you refuse to do, rather than what you are capable of becoming. The anatomy of nihilism is also deeply linked to the fear of suffering. Modern psychological discourse has become obsessed with the elimination of pain. We have built an entire culture around the idea that the good life is a life free from stress, discomfort, and hardship. Nietzsche would argue that this is the ultimate act of self-diminution. He understood that human potential is forged in the fire of difficulty. By trying to sanitize our lives, we are effectively castrating our own drive for greatness. We are becoming the last man, a creature that Nietzsche described as someone who seeks only comfort, who avoids all risks, and who is ultimately content with a small, trivial existence. When you remove the struggle, you remove the growth. And when you remove growth, you are left with the hollow emptiness of the nihilist. The psychological danger of our current age is that we are trapped in a cycle of aimlessness. We have been liberated from the old chains, but we have not developed the strength to walk on our own. We are like children who have been told we can do anything, but who have no idea who we are or what we want to achieve. This is where the will to power becomes the critical psychological engine. It is not about a desire to dominate others, as is often misunderstood. It is about the fundamental drive to master yourself and to expand your capacities. It is the urge to turn your potential into reality. If you are not exercising this will, you are being acted upon by the wills of others. You are either the sculptor or you are the stone. Consider how you approach your own life. Do you make choices based on your internal conviction, or do you make them to fit into a template created by others? When you are faced with a difficult decision, do you ask what you truly want to become, or do you ask what is expected of you? Every time you choose the expected path to avoid conflict or judgment, you are reinforcing your own nihilism. You are telling yourself that your individual vision is not worth the price of admission. This is how the spirit is broken. You don't lose your soul in a single dramatic moment. You lose it in the thousands of tiny, cowardice choices you make every day to stay safe and unremarkable. The diagnosis of modern nihilism is also a challenge to our relationship with truth. We live in a world where we are increasingly comfortable with illusion. We prefer comfortable lies over harsh truths because the truth is demanding. The truth requires us to act. It requires us to own our failures and to acknowledge that there is no magical solution waiting to save us. Nietzsche was a radical advocate for the truth. He believed that we needed to face the abyss with our eyes wide open. He was not looking for a way to make the world better in a soft, moralistic sense. He was looking for a way to make the individual stronger, more resilient, and more honest. To break the chains of nihilism, you must first develop the psychological fortitude to stand in the silence. You have to be comfortable being the only one who defines your value. This is incredibly difficult. It is the ultimate form of loneliness. When you stop relying on external validation, you will find that you have very few people to talk to, because most people are still deeply embedded in the structures of the herd. They will not understand you. They will view your autonomy as a threat or as an arrogance. But this is the price of entry into a life of meaning. You must be willing to be an outsider to your own society. The anatomy of the nihilist is also defined by a lack of perspective on time. Nihilism makes us prisoners of the present. We are obsessed with immediate gratification, immediate feedback, and immediate resolution of our problems. We have lost the ability to think in terms of the long arc of our own development. Nietzsche's work challenges us to look beyond the immediate. He suggests that if we don't have a vision that extends far into the future, a vision that justifies our current suffering, we will inevitably fall into the pit of despair. You must have a purpose that is large enough to contain your frustrations, your losses, and your failures. If your life is only about today, you are already lost. We must also look at how we process our own history. Nihilism thrives on regret and the obsession with the past. We are constantly looking back at what could have been, what should have been, and how we were wronged. This is the psychology of the victim. It keeps you chained to your own limitations. The healthy psyche, in the Nietzschean sense, is one that does not just accept the past, but wills it. It takes everything that has happened, every trauma, every failure, every mistake, and integrates it into the story of who they are becoming. You don't change the past. You transform the meaning of the past by how you choose to live in the future. This requires a radical shift in how we think about good and evil. Nietzsche argued that these categories were often used as tools for social control. He believed that the people who were truly capable of great things were often the ones who had to ignore the conventional, moralistic definitions of their time. This is not a justification for cruelty. It is an argument for the necessity of individual conscience. You must be the one who decides, based on your own higher standards, what is worthy of your effort. You must have the courage to say no to the values that you have been told to accept, and yes to the values that you have tested and found to be true in your own experience. The psychological path out of nihilism is therefore a path of continuous self-overcoming. You are not a static object. You are a process. You are a bridge between the animal you were and the being you could become. If you are not in a state of constant growth, if you are not actively challenging your own comfort, your own beliefs, and your own limitations, then you are decaying. The universe does not offer a middle ground. You are either moving toward a more expansive state of being, or you are sliding backward into the comfort of the herd. When we talk about the death of God, we are talking about the ultimate invitation to maturity. It is the moment when humanity was forced to grow up, but most of us have refused. We have spent the last century and a half trying to find new gods to worship, new ideologies to save us, and new ways to distract ourselves from the void. The psychological anatomy of this refusal is fear. We are afraid of what we might find if we truly stop to look at ourselves. We are afraid that if we stripped away all the social conditioning, we might find that we don't have the strength to be our own gods. But that fear is the only thing standing in your way. You are already in the void. The abyss is already here. You have two choices. You can either look away, keep running, and continue to live a life that is defined by the reactive needs of the herd, or you can look directly into the abyss, accept that the responsibility for your life rests entirely on your shoulders, and begin the work of creating your own meaning. This is the transition from the child to the adult. This is the transition from the slave to the master. This psychological evolution requires a brutal, unflinching honesty. You have to be able to look at your own actions and see them for exactly what they are. You have to be able to call yourself out on your own excuses. Why are you working that job? Is it because you love it, or because you are afraid to leave? Why are you in that relationship? Is it because it is vital to your growth, or because you fear being alone? Why do you believe what you believe? Is it because you have examined the evidence, or because it makes you feel safe among your peers? The anatomy of nihilism is, at its core, a failure of the will. It is the belief that the effort required to create value is not worth it because nothing matters. But mattering is not a property of the universe. It is a property of the human will. The universe doesn't have to matter for you to live a life of incredible power, creativity, and intensity. In fact, the fact that the universe doesn't care is what makes your choices so meaningful. You are creating light in a place where there was none. You are imposing your own order onto the chaos. This is not a tragedy. It is the ultimate expression of human potential. As you begin to dismantle the nihilism within yourself, expect to feel a sense of profound disorientation. When you stop living by the rules of the herd, you lose the safety of their approval. You lose the familiar landmarks of conventional life. You will feel alone. You will feel that you have lost your way. That is the point. You have to lose the old way to find your own way. You are not meant to be a follower of any set of rules, including the rules that Nietzsche himself wrote. You are meant to be a student of your own experience. The process of overcoming nihilism is not a destination. It is a state of constant, alert tension. It is the decision to remain awake in a world that is designed to put you to sleep. It is the commitment to be the person who, when faced with the emptiness of existence, decides that they are going to fill that space with their own ambition, their own love, their own art, and their own strength. It is the decision that, since you have been given the gift of consciousness in an indifferent universe, you are going to use it to the absolute limit of your capacity. When you reach this state of mind, the death of God is no longer a crisis. It is the greatest liberation in human history. It is the moment you realize that you are the creator of your own destiny. You are no longer waiting for permission. You are no longer waiting for a purpose. You are the source of the purpose. You are the one who determines the value of your actions. You are the one who defines the height of your ambitions. And because you are the one in control, you are the one who is truly, deeply, and profoundly free. This is the psychological anatomy of the individual who has survived the death of the old world and has chosen to build something new from the wreckage. It is not an easy path. It is perhaps the most difficult path an individual can take. It demands everything from you: your time, your energy, your focus, and your willingness to let go of everything you have been told is important. But it is the only path that leads to the realization of your true nature. It is the only path that leads to the authentic, powerful existence that Nietzsche saw as the ultimate potential of the human spirit. Do not look for comfort. Look for challenge. Do not look for safety. Look for the next stage of your own evolution. The anatomy of nihilism can be dissected and understood, and once it is understood, it can be overcome. You have the power to define your own reality. You have the power to break the chains of inherited morality and to forge an existence that is, in every sense of the word, your own. The abyss is looking back at you. What will you do with the time that is yours? Will you fall into it, or will you use it to anchor your own rise? This is the core question of your life, and the answer is entirely and beautifully up to you. The will to power is the beating heart of Nietzsche's entire philosophical project. It is not, as many have wrongly assumed over the last century, a political ideology or a call for the brutal oppression of others. To interpret it that way is to view the world through the lens of a small, fearful mind. The will to power is, first and foremost, a psychological law of human nature. It is the fundamental, driving force that dictates how we exist, how we interact with the world, and how we either stagnate or ascend. At its simplest level, the will to power is the instinct to expand, to influence, to master oneself, and to overcome the resistance that the world inevitably puts in our path. Think of every living thing you have ever observed. A plant does not merely exist. It reaches toward the light. It pushes its roots deeper into the earth, overcoming the density of the soil. It expands. If it stops expanding, it dies. Humans are no different. We are hardwired with a deep-seated need to grow, to create, to manifest our will in the external world, and to gain mastery over our own internal impulses. When you feel a sense of accomplishment, when you successfully learn a complex skill, or when you finally stand your ground against a pressure that has held you back for years, you are experiencing the will to power. It is the feeling of life realizing its own strength. The psychological reality of this drive is that it is often frustrated by our own social conditioning. We are taught that power is a dirty word, that it implies greed or ego. Consequently, we spend our lives suppressing our own drive to expand. We apologize for our ambitions. We dial down our intensity so that we do not make others feel uncomfortable. We sacrifice our natural growth to maintain the status quo of the herd. This suppression does not make the will to power disappear. It simply turns it inward. It becomes a source of neurosis, anxiety, and self-sabotage. When you don't express your will toward a constructive goal, that energy remains inside you, rotting into resentment or exploding in destructive, unfocused bursts. To master your own psychology, you must first stop viewing your ambition as something that needs to be tamed or apologized for. You must recognize that the desire to be excellent, the desire to leave a mark, and the desire to master your environment are not moral failings. They are the most authentic expressions of your humanity. The question is not whether you have a will to power. The question is whether you are directing that will with clarity and purpose. Most people are drifting, their will being pulled in 1,000 different directions by social media, corporate structures, and the opinions of their friends. To act with the will to power is to reclaim that energy and focus it on a singular trajectory of self-expansion. This requires a radical shift in how you handle resistance. A weak person sees an obstacle and views it as a reason to stop. They take the resistance as a sign that they are not meant to do something. A person who understands the will to power sees resistance as a necessary component of growth. You cannot build muscle without the resistance of a weight. You cannot build character without the resistance of a difficult challenge. Nietzsche would argue that you should actually seek out environments where your will is tested. If your life is too easy, if you are never challenged, you are effectively atrophying. Your soul is getting soft. You need the pushback of reality to know what you are truly made of. This concept of self-mastery is the most vital part of the will to power. We often think that power is about controlling other people, but that is a secondary, low-level manifestation. True power is the capacity to regulate your own desires. It is the ability to command your own mind to stay focused when you want to be distracted. It is the ability to maintain your composure when you feel the urge to panic. It is the ability to act according to your own values, even when your emotions are screaming at you to do something else. When you can control yourself, you have already conquered the most difficult territory in existence. You are no longer a slave to your instincts. You are the master of your own house. Nietzsche often spoke about the importance of the ruling instinct. We have many conflicting drives: the drive to be safe, the drive to be curious, the drive to be creative, the drive to be lazy. The average person is a chaotic jumble of these drives, constantly switching from one to the other depending on the mood of the day. The individual who possesses a strong will to power organizes these drives into a hierarchy. They decide which instincts serve their ultimate vision and which ones need to be silenced. They become a unified entity. This is what it means to be an integrated human being. You are not a collection of parts fighting for control. You are a focused beam of intention. There is a psychological intensity to this that the modern world finds uncomfortable. We are encouraged to be balanced, to be moderate. But Nietzsche knew that the great achievements of human history, the art, the science, the philosophy were never the result of moderation. They were the result of an intense, almost obsessive focus to achieve something of significance. You have to be willing to be a little bit unbalanced in the direction of your goals. You have to be willing to sacrifice the trivial comforts that everyone else is obsessed with. This isn't a rejection of the good life, but a redefinition of it. For you, the good life is not the absence of stress. It is the presence of high stakes, meaningful work. You must also learn to navigate the envy of others. When you begin to exercise your will to power, when you begin to expand and grow, you will inevitably become a target for the resentment of those who have given up on their own growth. They will tell you that you are too much, or that you are trying too hard. They will try to pull you back into the comfort of the mediocre. This is the test of your will. If you back down to satisfy them, you are proving that your will to power was never actually that strong. You have to be willing to stand alone in your ambition. You have to be willing to be misunderstood, and even disliked, because you are no longer playing by the rules that made them feel safe. The will to power is also an engine for transformation. It is the mechanism by which you reinvent yourself. You are not stuck with the personality, the habits, or the limitations you have today. You can actively, consciously choose to build a new set of capabilities. If you are naturally timid, you can train yourself to be bold. If you are naturally disorganized, you can train yourself to be precise. You are the architect of your own character. Every time you consciously override a negative impulse and replace it with a positive, expansive action, you are physically strengthening the neural pathways of your own mastery. You are literally building a stronger version of yourself. We must address the psychological cost of this path. It is exhausting to live with this level of intention. It is much easier to just go with the flow, to let life happen to you, and to complain when things don't go your way. When you choose to exercise your will, you take full ownership of your outcomes. If you fail, you cannot blame luck. You cannot blame the system. You have to take responsibility for the fact that your strategy was wrong or your execution was flawed. This is a terrifying burden, but it is the only way to be free. The slave is someone who is not responsible for their life. The master is the one who accepts that every outcome is, in some way, a reflection of their own will and their own choices. This brings us to the integration of the shadow, the darker, more aggressive, or more primal aspects of your personality. Instead of pretending these don't exist, the will to power demands that you bring them into the fold. A man who has no capacity for aggression is not a peaceful man. He is a harmless man. A man who can be aggressive, but chooses to control it, who can harness that intensity and direct it toward a noble goal, is a powerful man. You need the energy of the beast to fuel your ascent. You don't get rid of the drive. You refine it. You civilize it. You turn your raw energy into work, into art, into leadership, and into love. The most profound realization of the will to power is that the world is a mirror of your own intensity. When you move through the world with a clear, focused, and powerful will, the world tends to bend around you. People respond to those who know exactly where they are going. Opportunities appear because you have made yourself ready for them. The obstacles that seemed massive start to shrink because you are no longer approaching them with hesitation. You are approaching them with the assumption that you will overcome them. You change the reality of your life simply by changing the intensity of your presence. As you reflect on this, ask yourself, where in my life am I withholding my power? Where am I playing small to avoid the discomfort of growth? Where am I waiting for someone else to give me the signal that it is okay to expand? The will to power is a living, breathing instinct. It is not something you have, it is something you do. It is a practice. You practice it by taking the extra step when you are tired. You practice it by saying the thing that needs to be said, even when it is awkward. You practice it by choosing to build something difficult, rather than consuming something easy. You will find that as you commit to this, your definition of happiness will change. It will stop being about feeling good and start being about feeling effective. You will derive your joy from the fact that you are moving, that you are overcoming, and that you are becoming more than you were yesterday. This is the joy of the active life. It is the joy of the warrior who knows that the fight is not the end goal, but that the process of the fight is what makes life worth living. You are here to experience the fullness of your own potential, and that potential is only unlocked through the exercise of your will. Never forget that the will to power is essentially the love of life in its most raw, honest, and unadulterated form. To deny this will is to deny life itself. To embrace it is to accept your place in the unfolding of existence as a participant rather than a spectator. You are here to leave your footprint. You are here to be a force, not just a fact. You are here to shape the world, not just to be shaped by it. This is a daunting mandate, but it is also the most exhilarating adventure a human being can undertake. So, continue to push, continue to reach, continue to refine your understanding of what you are capable of. Do not let the criticism of the herd slow your pace. Do not let the fear of failure dictate your strategy. You have within you a reservoir of energy that is waiting to be directed. That is your will to power. It is your soul's desire to be more, to see more, and to do more. Honor that desire by giving it everything you have. The world may be indifferent to your struggle, but you must not be. You must be the most dedicated, the most focused, and the most relentless advocate for your own growth. That is how you break the chains. That is how you become the architect of your own meaning. As you look into the future, do not ask if you will succeed. Ask how you will grow. If you make growth your primary objective, success becomes an inevitable consequence of your character. You are in a race with yourself. You are the only competition that matters. When you win that race, when you finally surpass the person you were yesterday, you will realize that the will to power was the secret all along. It was the tool that allowed you to transcend the nihilism, to ignore the herd, and to build a life that is, in every sense, a masterpiece of your own creation. Stand up, take the responsibility, and let your will be the compass that guides you to your greatness. This is the essence of self-expansion. This is the path to the individual you are destined to be. The revaluation of values is perhaps the most daunting task Nietzsche ever set for humanity. It is not merely about changing your opinion on politics or religion. It is about conducting a surgical operation on your own conscience. For most of your life, you have been operating on a software update provided by society, your parents, your teachers, and your culture. You believe certain things are good and bad simply because you were told they were, or because they are the values that make the people around you feel safe. To undergo the revaluation of values is to take that software, tear it out, and start writing your own code from scratch. It is the act of deciding, for the first time, what actually matters to you. The psychological foundation of the revaluation begins with the recognition of what Nietzsche called slave morality. This is a mode of existence defined by reaction. It is a system of values that was born out of weakness and resentment. When a group of people feels oppressed, marginalized, or physically and psychologically weaker than those they envy, they develop a moral code that makes their own weakness look like a strength. They start to praise humility as meekness, cowardice as patience, and passivity as peace. They construct a narrative that says the strong are evil and the weak are virtuous. This was a survival mechanism for thousands of years, but in the modern world, it has become a trap. It has become a way to justify mediocrity and to punish anyone who dares to excel. To break these chains, you have to realize how deeply embedded these values are in your own psyche. You probably feel a sense of guilt when you want to achieve something great. You feel a sense of shame when you want to distinguish yourself from the crowd. You feel a pressure to be equal to everyone else, even when you know that people are not equal in their ambition, their talent, or their dedication. This is the slave morality speaking through you. It is the voice of the herd reminding you that you have no right to stand out. The revaluation of values is the process of silencing that voice and replacing it with your own. This is a dangerous process because it effectively makes you a stranger to your own culture. When you start living by your own values, values that prioritize strength, honesty, creation, and individual excellence, people will accuse you of being cold, arrogant, or selfish. They will try to pull you back into the comfort of their morality. They will attempt to make you feel like your growth is a transgression against the community. You have to be psychologically prepared for this isolation. You have to understand that when you break the chains of the herd, you lose the safety of the herd. But you gain something far more valuable, the right to define your own worth. The master morality, which Nietzsche proposes as the alternative, is defined by self-affirmation. It does not look at the world and ask, "What does the group think of me?" It looks at the world and asks, "What is my own standard of excellence?" A master in the psychological sense does not need to tear others down to feel superior. He is too busy building his own reality. He is not defined by what he is against. He is defined by what he is for. He creates his own virtues based on what makes him stronger, more creative, and more capable of expanding his influence. If he values courage, it is not because courage is good in a general sense, but because courage is a necessary component of his own growth. This is why the revaluation requires such deep, brutal honesty. You have to look at every single value you hold and ask, why do I believe this? If the answer is because I was told to, or because it's the popular thing to believe, then that value is a chain. You have to be willing to discard it. This is a terrifying exercise because it leaves you temporarily in the dark. For a while, you may feel like you have no map, no compass, and no anchor. That is the point. You are currently building the map. You are building the compass. By stripping away the inherited values, you create the space for your own nature to emerge. Consider the concept of forgiveness. The herd values forgiveness as an absolute, unconditional duty. Nietzsche would ask you to look at whether that value actually serves you. Are you forgiving people who have no intention of changing, simply to maintain a false sense of peace? Are you suppressing your own rightful anger to look moral? A true revaluation might lead you to conclude that for you, justice, accountability, and the setting of firm boundaries are higher virtues than passive forgiveness. This is not about becoming a villain. It is about becoming a person who manages their life with clarity rather than sentimentality. The same applies to the concept of kindness. In a slave morality, kindness is often a mask for a lack of courage, a way to avoid any real conflict. In a master morality, kindness is a tool of the strong. You are kind not because you are afraid of being mean, but because you have the strength to be generous. You choose to give, to support, and to build, not out of a sense of duty or fear of judgment, but out of the overflow of your own power. You see the difference? In the first case, the value is a chain. In the second, the value is an expression of your own sovereignty. You must also learn to revalue your suffering. The herd looks at suffering and asks, how can we make this stop? Who is to blame? They treat suffering as a sign that something is wrong with the world. You must revalue it. You must look at your own suffering and ask, what is this preparing me for? How can I use this to deepen my resolve or refine my skill? When you change your value system, you change the meaning of your pain. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being a student of them. This is the ultimate act of liberation. It turns the worst parts of your life into the foundation of your future strength. This revaluation also applies to your ambitions. You have likely been conditioned to believe that you should have a career, a retirement, and a balance. But what if those values are just ways to keep you in the middle of the pack? What if your nature is not designed for a standard life? The revaluation of values gives you the permission to be an outlier. It allows you to pursue a life that looks completely insane to the average person, provided that it is a life that allows you to fully express your own will to power. You don't have to explain yourself to the herd. You don't have to apologize for your intensity. You just have to be excellent at what you choose to do. You will find that as you go through this process, your relationships will change. You will naturally drift away from people who are committed to the slave morality, because their constant need for validation, their obsession with equality, and their fear of excellence will become exhausting to you. You will begin to seek out people who are also in the process of self-creation. This is not because you are becoming snobbish. It is because you are moving toward a different level of psychological development. You need to be around people who are also trying to become something more than they were yesterday. This is a lifelong process. You don't complete the revaluation of values in a weekend. It is a constant, ongoing practice of checking your impulses, challenging your beliefs, and ensuring that you are not slipping back into the comfortable patterns of the herd. Every time you feel the urge to do something just because that's what people do, you have a new opportunity to perform the revaluation. You can stop, take a breath, and decide if that is what you want to do. That is the moment of power. That is the moment you become the architect of your own reality. Do not be afraid of the immoral label that people might attach to you. Nietzsche was called many things by the people of his time, precisely because he refused to play by their moral rules. If you are doing something great, if you are building something real, if you are living with integrity according to your own standards, then you are a moral individual in the highest sense of the word. You are creating your own morality. You are no longer borrowing it from the past. You are a living, breathing expression of a new way to be human. The ultimate goal of this revaluation is to become what Nietzsche called the creator of values. This is the highest level of human existence. It is the state where you are so integrated, so powerful, and so clear in your own identity that you don't just follow the rules, you set the standard. People start to look at you and wonder how you do it. They start to admire the strength of your character, the clarity of your vision, and the intensity of your focus. They don't have to understand it. You just have to live it. You are currently standing at a crossroads. You can continue to live a life that is defined by the values of other people, a life that is safe, predictable, and ultimately meaningless. Or you can commit to the revaluation of values. You can take the responsibility of defining your own good and your own evil. You can choose to break the chains of the herd and start the difficult, lonely, and incredibly rewarding work of becoming your own master. There is no middle ground. The chains are either holding you or you are breaking them. The choice is yours to make, and it is a choice you must make every single day. The herd will always be there, offering you the comfort of their mediocrity. The temptation to fit in will always be present, but you now know the truth. You know that those chains are not made of steel, they are made of your own fear. Once you see that, you realize that you have the power to step out of the cage at any moment. You just have to be willing to walk away from everything that is not a reflection of your own highest potential. Start small. Look at your daily habits. Look at the people you spend your time with. Look at the goals you have set for yourself. Are these things you actually value? Or are they just things you think you are supposed to value? Be honest. The honesty is the beginning of the revaluation. And once you begin, do not look back. The path of the individual, the path of the creator, is the only path that makes this life worth living. It is the path of the one who refuses to be a copy of someone else. It is the path of the one who dares to be an original. Stay the course. When the doubts arise, when the isolation feels overwhelming, remind yourself why you started this. You started this because you knew, deep down, that you were capable of more than what you were told. You started this because you wanted to live a life that was yours, and not a life that was handed to you. That desire is the most sacred thing you possess. Protect it, nurture it, let it grow into the foundation of your new reality. The revaluation of values is not just a philosophy, it is a way of life for the strong, for the courageous, and for the free. And that is exactly what you are becoming. The concept of eternal recurrence is the final, most terrifying, and ultimately most liberating psychological filter that Friedrich Nietzsche ever devised. It is not a cosmological theory about the physics of the universe. It is a thought experiment designed to test the strength of your spirit. Nietzsche asks you to imagine that a demon sneaks into your loneliest moment and whispers that this life, as you are living it right now, you will have to live again and again, in the same sequence, with the same joys, the same sorrows, the same failures, and the same triumphs, for all eternity. There will be nothing new. Every pain you have felt and every pleasure you have tasted will repeat in an infinite loop. How do you react to this thought? Does it fill you with a sense of crushing despair? Or does it trigger a feeling of absolute, electrifying affirmation? This is the ultimate litmus test for the state of your will to power. If the idea of living your life over again makes you want to hide, to change your past, or to regret your choices, then you are not yet the master of your own existence. You are still a person who is burdened by the weight of their own life, rather than someone who carries it with joy. To reach the height of the Nietzschean individual, you must reach the point where you can look at your life, the entire, messy, difficult, beautiful chaos of it, and say, yes, I would choose this again. I would choose this over and over forever. This is the meaning of amor fati, or the love of fate. It is the final psychological evolution. Most people spend their lives in a state of rebellion against reality. They resent the hand they were dealt. They wish their past was different, and they are constantly hoping for a future that will fix everything. This is a form of sickness. It is a refusal to accept the necessity of what has already happened. The one who understands the eternal recurrence stops wishing for a different life. They stop trying to edit their history. They embrace every moment, even the agonizing ones, as necessary pieces of the puzzle that make them who they are. Psychologically, this is the ultimate act of integration. When you practice the eternal recurrence, you can no longer afford to live a half-life. You can no longer afford to procrastinate on your goals, to hide your true feelings, or to compromise your values, because you are forced to confront the reality that you are carving these choices into the stone of eternity. If you knew that your current actions were going to be repeated forever, would you continue to waste your potential? Would you continue to settle for mediocrity? Would you continue to tolerate the people or the situations that keep you small? The eternal recurrence forces you to live with an intensity that you would never otherwise achieve. It turns your life into a work of art. An artist does not regret the brush strokes they have already made, because each one is essential to the final picture. The master of their own life sees their experiences the same way. You do not wish away the time you spent in struggle, because that struggle was the very thing that forced you to become strong. You do not wish away the time you spent in failure, because that failure was the catalyst for your evolution. You accept your life in its totality. You treat your life as if it were a performance that you are proud to give again and again. This filter effectively clears away all the triviality that clutters the modern mind. Most of our anxieties are based on things that are inherently unimportant. We worry about what others think. We worry about minor setbacks, and we worry about the future. When you view your life through the lens of the eternal recurrence, all of that noise evaporates. What remains? The things you truly loved, the things you truly created, the moments of intense, genuine experience, the moments where you were truly yourself. Everything else, the social posturing, the petty grievances, the material obsessions, looks like the waste of time that it actually is. To live as if you were going to repeat your life forever, you are becoming the kind of person who is worthy of an eternal existence. This is not about seeking immortality in the afterlife. It is about achieving a state of being where you are so satisfied with the quality of your choices, the depth of your presence, and the integrity of your actions that the idea of more doesn't matter. You have already lived enough. You have already lived well. You have lived in a way that is self-justifying. This perspective also cures the paralysis of regret. Regret is essentially the attempt to live in a time that no longer exists. It is the refusal to accept the past. But if you accept that your life is an eternal recurrence, the past is not something that is over. It is something that is eternally present. Your past is part of you, and it is part of your recurring reality. By loving your fate, you stop being a victim of your memories. You transform your history into the foundation of your future. You take the trauma, the shame, and the disappointment, and you own it. You say, "This too is mine. This too is beautiful because it is mine." The psychology of the eternal recurrence is the psychology of the Übermensch, the overman. This is the person who has moved beyond the morality of the herd, who has mastered their own will to power, and who has completed the revaluation of values. This person is not a superman in the sense of being a god. They are a superman in the sense that they have mastered their own human nature. They have overcome the need for external validation, the fear of their own potential, and the tendency to resent reality. They are fully, unapologetically present in the life they have created for themselves. Think about the way you walk through your day. Are you walking through it as if you are preparing for something else, something better, something later? Or are you walking through it as if this day is the ultimate expression of your existence? The eternal recurrence demands the latter. It demands that you treat your daily routine with the reverence of a religious ritual. If you are going to eat a meal, eat it with full awareness. If you are going to have a conversation, have it with total honesty. If you are going to do your work, do it with absolute excellence. Every moment is the center of the universe when you live as if it will repeat forever. This is the ultimate psychological filter for distinguishing between what is necessary and what is superficial. When you ask yourself, "Do I want this to recur for eternity?" you instantly know the answer. You don't want your irritability to recur. You don't want your insecurity to recur. You don't want your cowardice to recur. You do want your moments of clarity, your acts of courage, and your expressions of love to recur. This becomes your guide. You begin to prune your life. You begin to cut away everything that you would not want to experience again. You are left with a life that is lean, efficient, and filled only with the things that are worthy of you. This leads to a state of profound peace. It is not the peace of the idle or the peace of the unconcerned. It is the peace of the warrior who has won the war against their own self-doubt. You are at peace because you are no longer in conflict with reality. You are no longer trying to force the world to be something other than what it is. You are fully aligned with the necessity of your existence. You have reached a level of psychological maturity where you can say yes to the world without reservation, without hesitation, and without the need for anything else to change. The eternal recurrence is not just a philosophy for the end of your life. It is a philosophy for every single second of it. It is the ultimate tool for focus. When you are tempted to break your discipline, remember the recurrence. When you are tempted to lie to yourself, remember the recurrence. When you are tempted to give up on your dream, remember the recurrence. You are building the record of your own existence. Make sure that the record is one that you will be proud to hear played back to you for all of eternity. This requires you to let go of the need to be liked by the world. The person who lives with this level of intensity will always be an enigma to the herd. They will look at you and wonder why you are so serious, why you are so focused, or why you don't play by their rules. It doesn't matter. You are not living for their approval. You are living to be the author of your own life. You are living for the feeling of deep, genuine satisfaction that comes from knowing you have squeezed every ounce of meaning out of the time you were given. In the end, the eternal recurrence is an invitation to take your life seriously. It is a demand that you stop living like a guest in your own existence and start living like the owner. You have one life. Whether it recurs eternally or not is irrelevant to the practical application of this truth. The truth is that you have this moment, right now, and you will never have it again. That is enough. The pressure of that reality is what makes your life precious. The difficulty of your life is what makes it meaningful. The fact that you are the one who has to bear the weight of it is what makes you the hero of your own story. So, walk forward with the weight of eternity on your shoulders. It is not a burden. It is a gift. It is the dignity of the human spirit to be able to face the void, to face the silence, and to decide that, regardless of whether there is an external purpose or not, you will provide your own. You will create your own light. You will live with such depth, such integrity, and such passion that your life becomes a testament to the power of the individual. You have now traveled the entire path. You have confronted the diagnosis of nihilism. You have harnessed your will to power. You have revalued your entire system of beliefs, and you have tested yourself against the eternal recurrence. You are no longer the person who started this. You have been broken down and rebuilt. You are the architect of your own values. You are the master of your own destiny. You are the one who has looked into the abyss, and instead of blinking, you have started to build a bridge across it. Do not let this go to waste. The world is full of people who are lost, who are drifting, and who are waiting to be told what to do. You are not one of them. You are the one who has taken the responsibility. You are the one who has found the strength. You are the one who has realized that the death of the old gods was not the end of the world, but the beginning of your own. Go out and live it. Live it with the intensity of someone who knows exactly what they are doing. Live it with the confidence of someone who has chosen their own fate. And most importantly, live it with the love of someone who would gladly choose to live it all over again, exactly as it is, forever. This is your life. This is your legacy. This is your victory.